Okay, go ahead and pull out your guided notes from yesterday. We're going to briefly zip through them, make sure you're on board with everything and you have good quality answers. And if you have any questions, feel free to voice them so we can get your confusion cleared up. Bless you. So part of your understanding of the digestive system is the anatomy, the structure and location of all the organs. We're going to start there. So the top left here, obviously I'll take the easy one. That's your mouth, where food enters, it's chewed up or masticated. And then what's this long tube that squeezes the food down into the stomach? The esophagus, right. And does anyone remember what that squeezing action is called? No? Ginsler? It's called peristalsis, right. We'll revisit that later. After the esophagus, what's this orange vessel at the other end? The stomach. Like we said in our opening discussion, acids and enzymes break down proteins and it churns up the food. Next to the stomach, kind of looks like a triangular lobe. In our picture, it's a maroon color. What would that be? The liver, which makes bile. And then this little tiny lobe on the underside of the liver, excuse me, what is that, Selena? The gallbladder, right. And it stores the bile between meals. Underneath the stomach, this little yellow sliver. Katie, that is the pancreas. And then this long green, I guess it's shorter than the other two, but it's larger in diameter. So what do we call that? Will? The large intestine? Which its main job is to absorb water from your food. And then lastly, on the inside here, our orange long tube. Rachel? Small intestines. Good. Any questions on how to identify the digestive system organs before we move on? In addition to knowing a little anatomy, you got to know the function of the organs as well. What does the gallbladder do? We already identified it, but what does it do, Katie? Stores bile. So when you eat, there's a chemical signal that tells the gallbladder to squeeze the bile into the small intestines. There's a little duct or a tiny tube, and then the bile can do its job and digest fats. What's the mouth do if you had to sum that up? I'll take the obvious function. It chews food, but what else? Will? Good. So it chews food and also chemically digests carbs. To be more specific, there's an enzyme called amylase in your saliva that breaks down or hydrolyzes the carbs into sugars. The stomach, what's it do? Lena? Churns and stores food. Good. What about the large intestine? It's the last stop of the digestive system, or one of the last stops. At that point, the food has been broken down. A lot of the amino acids, the sugars, the fatty acids, they've been absorbed. So what's left to do, Ryan? Right. It absorbs water and excretes or gets rid of solid waste, the byproducts. how does it work compared to the small intestine? What's the small intestine do? Selena? It takes in the food, absorbs the food molecules, and it also chemically digests all the food, or takes part in that. And then the liver, the food doesn't go through the liver, so why is it even considered part of the digestive system? What's its job? Katie? Makes bile, which helps digest your fat chemically. The pancreas, same thing. It's a solid organ. It's not like a tube or a container like a lot of these organs we've talked about. So the food doesn't go through it. What's its job then? Right, it makes a lot of the digestive enzymes. And lastly, what does the esophagus do? Well, squeezes the food into the stomach from the mouth. Any questions on the functions of the digestive organs? We talked about how the esophagus squeezes food into the stomach. There's a scientific term for that called peristalsis. So that's all peristalsis is. The squeezing of food down the digestive tract. So your esophagus, your small intestines, those are made of smooth muscle that can actually contract and move the food downward through those contractions. We already talked about amylase and what it does, but can someone refresh our memory? What's amylase do? Yeah? Right. Enzyme in saliva that hydrolyzes carbs or breaks them down into sugars. And then what's the difference between chemical and physical digestion? If I'm chemically digesting something, what would I be doing to it? How would I chemically digest a carb? What would happen to a carbohydrate? Kinsler? A different molecule, right. So there's chemical bonds being broken and new molecules are the product. What about physical digestion? How would you describe that? It's kind of the opposite. Are new molecules being formed? No, so how is it being digested? Nikos, what do you think? No? You're just getting cut up, smaller pieces. But it's still the same molecular structure, so there's not new molecules being formed. Are we good to move on, or do you need a minute to write? Take that as we're good. Which digestive organs first break down proteins? We already talked about this in the bell work. What is it? Chemically digest, I should have said. Which organ first chemically digests protein? Not the mouth. That's only the chemical digestion of carbs. Chris? The stomach, right. With the acids and enzymes that we mentioned earlier. And then this is kind of a review. What smaller molecules results from breaking down a protein chemically? Amino acids, right. You should know that by now. We've hit that like 5 or 6 times already in the class. How does the gallbladder and liver work together? They're like a team. Migos?
The liver makes the bile, the gallbladder stores it.
Perfect. The liver makes bile, and the gallbladder stores and secretes it, or squeezes it out when you eat. And we keep talking about food. What are the molecules that make up food? We've studied them quite extensively already in this class. Sam? You got it. Proteins, lipids, commonly known as fats, and carbs. And then lastly, what's the difference between the functions of the intestines? I mean, they both have the word intestine in them, so maybe they do the same thing. That seems logical, right? Not really. Nikos?
Doesn't the large intestine get rid of the solid waste and then the small one absorbs the food molecules?
Yep. So the large gets rid of solid waste, and it absorbs water. The small, its main job is to absorb the food molecules, or their monomers, I should say. It takes in food nutrients. And what's the structure that sucks in the nutrients? They look like little fingers because they have a lot of surface area to suck in the nutrients. What are those called? So they're called villi. And also, the small intestine chemically breaks down all the different types of food, but we already mentioned that earlier. Any questions, comments, thoughts before we transition? You want to revisit anything? Did I go too fast on some things? We're good?